Now we can define the same thing we did for the calculated column as measures. Okay, we can do the same thing for measures. So like we did earlier on, we defined measures and then we saw the effect of that measures on the table. Okay, on this particular table, right? We put measures over here. We can do the same thing as we are doing here, right? As we are doing for calculated column. So this time, instead of clicking on the new column, we're going to use the new measure. So let me go home and instead of now, previously we used new measure and then now we use new column. So I'm gonna go back and do new measure again. So now let me click on that. All right, so we're going to have this one, but before that, I want to use the same formula. So let me go back here and copy the formula. Let me get back to this table. Then I'll copy this formula, do this, copy it with Control C. Then I can now go back, let's go back and then to the new measure, right? And then here, I'm just going to paste it over here, all right? Now you can see that as soon as I do that, you can see that there's some red squiggly line over there showing us that the formula we are typing is wrong, right? The formula we are typing is wrong. Despite that, let me just let me even rename this one to total sales, okay, so that we will see the distinction between what we are just doing and what we did. Okay, this one is called total sales amount, so I don't want to name this one the same thing as total sales amount. So let me simplify it to total sales so that we see the difference. Now if I press enter here, right, let's see what happens. Now you see that it's showing us an error sign over here, right? A single value for column sales amount and table sales cannot be determined. This can happen when a measure formula refers to a column that contains many values without specifying an aggregation such as mean, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now what that means is that in measures, it will be looking for specific rows to add or to sum. Okay, but when you just say add sales amount to tax amount, it will be confused of which row to sum. Okay, which row to sum or which row to aggregate and which aggregation function to actually use. Okay, now we can fix this thing by adding some sort of a wrapper. Okay, which is here it is suggesting us that we should specify an aggregation such as mean, max, and so on. Okay, in this case we want sum. So what you do is that you can wrap this thing with an aggregation function. Okay, now you see that now as we do that, the red squiggly line is gone. Now if I press enter, this is going to be effective. Great. Now you see that that is defined, but you will not see it in your table, right? You will not see it in your table. This is an explicit measure and you're not going to see it in your table, but it's actually there, or it's actually here, total sales amount. Okay, now let's go back to our report panel over here, and this time we're going to see that total sales in action over here, right? So let me go to this table, right? And let me remove budget amount and sales amount and sales, right? And then I'm going to bring in that total sales that we just created, right? Let me add that one over here. Okay, great. Now you see that we have the total sales over there, right? Okay, let me also bring in the total sales amount. All right, let me add the total sales amount. Now you see how it is, right? Both of them give us exactly same values. Okay, this one is having some decimal, but we can just format it to whole numbers like this, right? So you can see how effective this is. Okay, you can see how effective this is. We have the total sales amount. You can see that both of them were doing the same thing over there, right? But in this case, we're able to calculate it, total sales amount, on the same column, right, as a column among our data set. Okay, but if you do measures, right, the measures are not going to appear here. The advantage is that now let's actually save it again, and then let's go and see the file size again. Great. Let's go and see the file size. That is after we have now created the measures. Okay, let's go and see the file size again and see how it looks now. Okay, now you see that it's 1969, right? So let's see the last one. You see that it was 1969. It did not even increase, right? You see that the file size is still the same. Sometimes it might increase just a little bit, but you can see that this time it did not even increase at all, right? But when we added the calculated field, that is the column, I mean the new column where we did the calculated field, you see that the file size greatly increased from 1954 to 1969, which was, I mean, a huge increase. But now after we added a new, I mean, new measure, right? New measure, it did not increase. We still have our 1969 over there. Okay, we still have the same amount, even though we did some measures over there, but it did not increase it. Okay, it did not increase it. We still have the same size. Sometimes it might increase just a little bit, right? That's the advantage of using measures instead of, say, calculated field. Okay, now imagine if you do imagine if you have a huge data set you're working on and you continuously use calculated fields, right? Just adding some columns of calculated fields, your file size is greatly going to increase, and that is going to slow down the entire model and even your system. Okay, so what you need to notice here is that if we create a measure, it only stores the formula and does not really take up space in memory, right? But if we create a column calculated field, it will take much memory, and so as you keep on creating calculated fields, your file becomes larger and larger, and eventually will slow the whole model and your system down. Okay, so it is more advisable to most of the time use measures. Okay, most of the time use measures instead of using calculated columns. Okay, you simply use measures, and that's going to store the formula, right? It's just going to store the formula, which you can easily use and then see. Okay, instead of using calculated fields. There are times you will need, for instance, if I want to see it right here, it's advisable, but don't keep on compounding different column calculated fields over and over again, because your file size is going to really increase and it will slow down the entire model that you're creating over here, right? I'm talking of this one. When I'm talking model, I'm talking of this formula that you're creating. Right? It's gonna slow down everything over here. Well, that's what is powering what is here. So it's gonna slow it down, and your entire system is gonna slow down because the file size itself is increasing. It's occupying much space in your system's memory. Okay, so make sure that you take advantage of measures, and always whenever necessary use measures. Okay.